Okay, I want you to, just for a second, close your eyes and transport yourself to Cape Town.
Okay.
It's February 2026, the peak of the South African summer. You've got that heat shimmering off the pavement, Table Mountain in the background. I mean, it's postcard perfect.
Right.
But if you zoom in, if you look at the city's streets, you see this really strange, almost tense split screen effect happening.
It's a tale of two cities in the same zip code, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
On one side, you have the Cape Town International Convention Center. It's just surrounded by this fortress of luxury SUVs, private security, and about, 10,000 people in suits that probably cost more than my first car.
That's the investing in African mining Indaba. That's the corporate Super Bowl of the mining world.
Exactly. And then, literally a stone's throw away, maybe near St. George's Cathedral, you have the complete inverse.
The Alternative Mining Indaba, or AMI. No SUVs, no security, just protest songs, handmade signs, and community leaders who've traveled from some of the most remote villages on the continent.
And they're there to share stories that are, frankly, very hard to listen to.
Yeah.
And that contrast, the suits versus the songs, that's our setup for today's deep dive. We're looking at this fascinating report by Torai Sherere from the Center for Artificial Intelligence and Sustainable Development, CASD.
And the mission today isn't just to look at why these two groups are, shouting at each other.
No, it's to figure out how they might actually start speaking the same language.
Which, it seems impossible when you see that divide.
Yeah.
But the report suggests the bridge between them might not be a politician or a treaty. It might be artificial intelligence.
Which, I'll be honest, my first reaction to that is it sounds like a tech bro fantasy, Let's sprinkle some AI on this humanitarian crisis and fix it.
I get that.
Uh-huh.
But as you dig into the details, it's actually a lot more grounded.
Yeah.
And more complicated than that.
Okay, but first let's set the stakes. Why is everyone descending on Cape Town in the first place?
It comes down to something called the mineral sovereignty gap. That's the core tension. If you look at the numbers in this report, Africa is basically holding the winning lottery ticket for the global energy transition.
Right.
We're talking 55% of the world's cobalt, nearly half the global manganese supply, and a staggering 90% of platinum group metals.
So if you want to build an electric car, a wind turbine, or even the smartphone you're listening on, you physically cannot do it without digging in African soil?
Correct. But the gap is the disconnect between that geological wealth and the actual lived reality of the people on top of it. The wealth is extracted, but the prosperity, it just doesn't stick. It flows out.
And that's why you have these two separate conferences.
That's the tension.
So let's go inside the first one, the corporate story, the main Indaba. The report says there are 10,500 delegates, 58 government ministers. That is a massive concentration of power.
It's just immense.
What is the conversation inside that room?
The conversation is critical minerals. It's very optimistic. The Vise is deal-making. They're talking about how to get these materials out of the ground faster, more efficiently, to, save the planet from climate change.
And the big buzzword is technology.
Unsurprisingly, yes.
Okay, this is where I found a stat in the report that it blew my mind. It says, unplanned maintenance eats up 60% of total spending in mining operations.
60, yeah.
60%?
Yeah.
That sounds insane. That's like saying 60% of your household budget goes to fixing your car because it breaks down every Tuesday.
It sounds high, but think about the environment. You're operating heavy machinery kilometers underground. Extreme heat, dust, vibration, things break constantly.
And when a crusher stops, the money stops.
The money stops. So the corporate pitch for AI is really straightforward. It's purely economic.
Right.
They're looking at generative AI, predictive tools, to cut those costs.
Yeah.
If you can predict when a bearing is going to seize 2 days before it happens, you save millions.
So it's all about profit margins and keeping the conveyor belts moving.
Pretty much. So narrative one is, we need efficiency to power the green transition.
Okay.
Right. But the expert view in the report warns that this is a trap. If you just focus on extraction and efficiency, you're missing the beneficiation piece.
Beneficiation?
It's a fancy word for processing the rock locally.
Yeah.
If you dig up bauxite and ship it to Europe, Africa gets pennies. If you turn that bauxite into aluminum in Africa, the value just skyrockets.
And the corporate AI pitch doesn't really solve that. It just makes the digging cheaper.
Exactly. Which brings us to the people outside, the Alternative Mining Indaba.
Right. You walk down the street to St. George's Cathedral, and nobody is talking about predictive maintenance for conveyor belts.
No. The theme there is alternative stories of mining. And it's a reality check. While the CEOs are looking at spreadsheets, The AMI participants are looking at survival.
They had sessions called Solidarity Stories and Telling It As It Is.
And there's one story in this report that really anchors the anger of the AMI. It's a disaster case study from Zambia, the Kafue River.
Yeah, we have to spend a minute on this because this isn't just a statistic. This is something else.
This is the incident at the Sino Metals Leach Zambia plant. In 2025, a tailings dam collapsed. Now, for you listening, a tailings dam is not a water reservoir. It's a massive holding pond for toxic sludge chemicals, crushed rock, heavy metals, everything left over.
And it failed.
Catastrophically. The wall breached, and 50 million liters of this toxic slurry spilled directly into the Kafue River.
50 million liters. I can't even.
Yeah.
What does that even look like?
It's a tidal wave of poison. The report details the fallout. 300,000 people directly affected. Livestock wiped out immediately. All the aquatic life fish, hippos killed.
Awful.
But the real tragedy, and the reason this is in a report about AI, was the silence.
What do you mean the silence?
It was a failure of early warning. The community didn't know the dam was unstable until the sludge was already in their drinking water. There was no data transparency. The corporate side might have known the pressure was building, but that information never left the control room.
That is just terrifying. And it contrasts so sharply with the self-congratulatory tone of the main Indaba. The report says they were celebrating a safety milestone, right?
They were. And to be fair, it's a genuine achievement. South Africa hit a record low of 42 mining fatalities in 2024. In deep-level mining, that is a massive improvement.
Okay, but that's the formal sector. That's the big companies with safety officers and, rules.
Precisely. If you look at the invisible sector, artisanal mining, the picture is horrific. The report points out that in places like Zimbabwe, the accident prevalence is around 35%.
35%.
That means more than 1 in 3 workers is getting hurt or killed.
That's not an occupation. That's a war zone.
And that is why the Alternative Indaba is so furious. They're saying, you're celebrating safety records while our brothers and sisters are dying in holes just a few miles away.
So we have the corporate efficiency narrative and the community survival narrative. But the report goes a step further and breaks down how this sovereignty gap actually works. It calls it the accountability crisis. And I want to dig in here because it's not just rich versus poor. It works differently in different countries.
It does. The mechanism of how the wealth is lost, it changes depending on which border you cross.
So let's start with Malawi. The report says the issue there is social and economic disruption in the gold mining regions. We're seeing child labor, HIV spikes, unsafe water. But here's the number that stopped me cold.
I know the one.
The government is only getting 2% of the revenue.
2%. It's a shocking number.
How is that even possible? Is the tax rate just 2%? That seems absurdly low.
No, it's not the official tax rate. The mechanism here is the informal nature of the whole trade. Most of this gold is dug by artisanal miners who have no legal standing. They can't just walk into a bank and sell a nugget.
So what do?
They sell it to illicit middlemen for cash, usually at a fraction of its real value. And those middlemen then smuggle the gold out of the country.
So the 2% is just what actually gets declared and taxed.
Exactly. The rest just vanishes into the black market. The country gets 100% of the social damage, the mercury in the water, the sick kids, and almost none of the money to fix it.
Wow. Okay, so Malawi is a smuggling problem. What about Tanzania? The report says capital flight.
Yeah, Tanzania is interesting because small-scale mining is huge there. It contributes 42% of the mining GDP. So the volume is there.
But the value leaves?
The value leaves. This is often done through something called transfer pricing.
Okay, break that down.
A multinational company might have a subsidiary in Tanzania, dig up the minerals, then sell them dirt cheap to another subsidiary in, say, a tax haven. The Tanzanian company shows no profit, so it pays no tax.
And the profit is realized offshore.
That's capital flight. The wealth is just sucked out through accounting loopholes.
That is infuriatingly clever. And then you've got South Africa, where the report highlights land rights. This feels more visceral.
It is. This is the Eastern Cape, specifically the resistance against titanium mining. Here, the mechanism of loss is the displacement of heritage.
Right.
You have a community that wants to farm the land, maintain their ancestral connection. The industry sees titanium for paint and aerospace. It's a clash of fundamental values.
So smuggling in Malawi, accounting tricks in Tanzania, and land grabs in South Africa, the system is broken in 3 different ways.
At least.
And usually this is the part of the show where we'd say, well, we need better laws. But the CISD report takes this hard left turn. It argues laws are too slow and humans are too corruptible.
It proposes Algorithms. It's a bold pivot. They call it a dual engagement strategy. The argument is that since the trust is broken, community doesn't trust the company, government can't track the money, you need a neutral third party.
And that third party is AI.
That third party is AI.
Okay, I have to be skeptical here because AI is a buzzword that gets slapped on everything. How does a computer program fix a smuggling ring or a collapsing dam? Let's look at Pillar 1. Predictive safety and environmental monitoring. This goes back to Zambia.
Right. So the failure in Zambia was a lack of data. KIZ proposing tech like INSAR, which stands for Interferometric Synthetic Aperture Radar.
Okay, that is a mouthful. What does it actually do?
It uses satellites to measure ground deformation. We're talking millimeter-level shifts in the Earth. It can see a dam wall kind of breathing or bulging long before a human eye would ever notice a crack.
So it's not just a camera?
No, it's data. And they combine that with IoT sensors in the water that perform spectral analysis.
Yeah.
They aren't just looking for mud. They're detecting spikes in specific heavy metals arsenic, let in real time.
So instead of a guy with a clipboard checking the dam once a week and maybe being paid to look the other way?
You have a satellite that doesn't sleep and doesn't take bribes. That's the idea. It moves from reaction to prevention. And crucially, the report argues this data should be shared. If the community has access to a dam health dashboard, they aren't relying on the company's word. They can see the danger themselves.
Okay, I can see the value there. But let's look at Pillar 2. Formalizing the invisible workforce. This is for the artisanal miners, the guys with shovels. The report talks about cadastras.
A cadastre is basically a public registry of land and mineral rights.
But here's my hang-up. You're talking about a guy in rural Malawi who might not even have a bank account, who is giving him the tech to log his gold into a digital system. Who pays for the iPad?
That is the billion-dollar question. And the report acknowledges this. The pressure has to come from the top of the supply chain. Companies like Apple or Tesla, they're under immense pressure to prove their cobalt is clean.
No child labor, no conflict finance.
Exactly. So the big buyers, they have to help pay for the tracking system because they need the receipt. The report suggests using blockchain-enabled traceability. If a miner can register their find on a secure digital ledger.
They create a digital passport for that rock.
Essentially, yes.
And what does the miner get out of it, besides more paperwork?
Legitimacy. If you can prove you dug this gold legally and the system tracks it, you can get a fair market price instead of the smuggler's rate. You could technically use that data to get a microloan because you can prove your income.
It turns a person digging a hole into a microenterprise.
That's the goal. It's about de-risking the human.
It sounds good in theory, but I'm still stuck on the governance part. Pillar 3 is governance and transparency. This is supposed to fix that Malawi scenario where the money vanishes. How does AI stop a politician from taking a kickback?
It makes it much, much harder to hide. If you have an AI system monitoring extraction volumes in real time using sensors on trucks, on belts, and comparing it to the export data, the anomaly creates an alert.
So if the mine says we dug 10 tons, but the sensor saw 50 tons move, a red light starts flashing somewhere.
Right. It automates the tax assessment. Currently, governments rely on the companies to self-report how much they dug. That is a massive conflict of interest.
AI removes the self-reporting. It creates an immutable record of volume versus value.
It's forcing honesty through surveillance, essentially.
A kind of algorithmic governance.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
And finally, Pillar 4, responsible exploration. Using AI to decide where to dig.
This is drilling into the future. Instead of clearing 100 acres of forest to dig test pits, AI analyzes geological data to pinpoint the ore body with extreme precision. You drill one hole instead of 10.
Which minimizes the ecological footprint.
And for small miners, it stops them from wasting their money digging in barren ground.
Okay, so we have this technological blueprint, but is this actually happening, or is it just a nice PDF sitting on a server somewhere?
Well, CISD is trying to make it real. The report outlines an action plan. They're launching pilot projects with Zambian authorities specifically for that AI monitoring in the Copper Belt.
They're going to the scene of the crime, so to speak.
They are, and they talk about upskilling, which I think is crucial because my first thought when I hear AI in mining is robots taking jobs.
Right, that's the fear.
But the report pushes a human-centered approach. They aren't trying to replace the artisanal miner. They want to make him safer. Imagine a workshop where miners use VR simulations to learn how to shore up a tunnel correctly.
Or how to use a handheld spectrometer to grade their own ore so they don't get ripped off. It's democratizing the tools.
Exactly. And on the geopolitical stage, they're looking at a trilateral model: China, Africa, and the West.
That feels ambitious. Getting those three to agree on lunch is hard, let alone a mining value chain.
It is ambitious. But the reality is China controls much of the processing, the West controls the demand, and Africa controls the resource. You can't build a functional system without all three.
So let's zoom out. We started with these two worlds, the suits in the convention center and the activists in the cathedral. Does this AI bridge actually connect them?
It offers a common language.
Data.
The corporate world understands data because it means efficiency, it means profit. The activist world needs data because it means proof of harm and validation of their labor.
So the satellite doesn't care if you're a CEO or a villager. The data is the data.
Exactly. It removes the he said, she said. If the sensor says the water is toxic, it's toxic. If the ledger says the gold came from a child-free zone, it's verified. It forces a baseline of truth that has been missing.
It almost sounds like we're outsourcing our conscience to the machine.
That's a cynical way to put it, but maybe an accurate one. When human trust fails, perhaps digital verification is the only way forward.
I want to leave our listeners with a thought on that. We spent this whole time talking about how satellites and algorithms can watch the minds and force fair play. But as we rush toward this green future, I'm left wondering if we need high-tech surveillance to force us to treat human beings with basic dignity. What does that say about the industry? Is AI the solution, or is it just a very expensive Band-Aid on a moral wound that we refuse to heal ourselves?
That is the question we all need to sit with.
This has been a heavy one, but a really necessary one. Thanks for walking us through it.
My pleasure.
See you on the next deep dive.